Today is National Learn About Butterflies Day, so we're going to learn a little more with Matthew Thorn. He's a research associate with Mississippi Entomological Museum. I think he studies bugs. Hey, Matt.
Hey, how's it going?
It is going well. By the way, I absolutely love your profession, but I can't pronounce it. So what is the technical term for what you do?
So I am an entomologist. It just literally means somebody that studies insects. And here in the Mississippi Entomological Museum, we focus on the ecology of imperiled habitats in the southeast.
I have to know, how did you get interested in the tiniest species of the animal kingdom, which maybe not the tiniest, but a tiny species of the animal kingdom?
Some of these things are itty bitty. I got into it really as a middle school insect project. I got into it, started just doing stuff for school and carried on with it. It was fascinating.
I think it is. It's an interesting area. I think, once you start to realize what role that they do play, even if they are a little annoying or, maybe they get overlooked when we're out in our yard or as springtime comes, you start to at least appreciate the little buggers a little better or open your eyes to the sights and sounds you hear outside, especially at night. But butterflies, man, they're pretty during the day, right? And it's an insect that we all enjoy at least catching a glimpse of. So what is it about butterflies, though, that makes it special for them to have their own kind of learn about day?
So butterflies are really like poster children for insects. They're a really approachable way for people to get into understanding how these super complex ecosystems that are right under our nose function. Butterflies are great indicators of habitat diversity and quality depending on the species. So there's just a lot here you can work with and learn about using butterflies as a pathway to just ecology in general.
So in Mississippi, when we think about seasons, does butterflies have, maybe season's not the right word, maybe we're thinking more of like their migration path, but do we have kind of like a season for that here?
Well, butterflies are not active. The same species is not active the entire warm season inside the Mississippi. So, you have some early spring species which are getting active right now that might only be out for about 2 weeks. And then we'll get like a mid-spring flush of butterflies, and then it'll kind of get a little calmer late spring, early summer, and you'll get a late summer, midsummer to late summer flush, and you get a fall flush. Really, we have about 3 butterfly seasons in Mississippi.
Wow, I don't think I realized that, Matt. I think the ones who get the best, at least PR, are the monarch butterflies, right? And they actually have like a really long migration kind of trail that, gets people's interest from multiple states. Does any part of Mississippi fall into that?
Oh, yeah, of course. We get a whole section of them coming up through Mississippi. We're kind of on the fringe of that a little bit, but farmland in Mississippi is still an important part of that migration pattern. One thing that I think is super interesting about the monarch migration that most people don't realize is that it's not the same butterfly that makes that entire path. It takes several generations of butterflies to make it from down in Mexico all the way up into the U.S. and then come back down. It takes several generations again. So butterflies that leave Mexico will never come back to there. And butterflies from North America will be the ones that end up down there.
What is the average lifespan of a butterfly?
Well, butterflies have a hard life. You can see some real beat-up butterflies out there. Usually it's, maybe several weeks to a month or so, but there are species that overwinter as adults that can make it to 6 or 8 months just because they're spending that winter time in the adult stage.
So when we're enjoying our butterflies that will find our spring flowers or our summer gardens, then we really should stop to sort of take advantage of it because they're probably not going to be with us the next year, right?
No, the ones you see now will not be here next year. There's 1 or 2 species that you might see adults in the late fall and see the same adults in the very early spring, but that's not usual for most species.
Well, that's kind of a downer. But then at the same time, Matt, it encourages us to be more present and at least more intentional when we are looking outside and enjoying our backyards, which I know so many of us are getting ready and geared up to do. If we want to help a plant on our back porches or maybe in our gardens to draw in some more butterflies, are there any specific species of plants that can do that?
So, there's a lot of flowers that do great at bringing some of these in. I'm not super knowledgeable about the landscaping flowers, but if you really want to help butterflies and provide habitat for butterflies, you need to not just provide the flowers, but provide the host plants. And that is a huge range of plants. Anything from native grasses up to trees can be hosts for butterflies. And just having a diverse native landscape will do a lot to bring in butterflies looking to lay eggs and bringing in caterpillars.
And then that in terms helps, I guess, the entire sort of ecosystem. Okay,
It
Matt.
does, yeah.
Yeah, we're moving into the springtime. What else in the insect world do you think we would find fascinating here in Mississippi that maybe we often overlook or don't think about?
Well, moths are butterflies' nighttime, counterparts, and people overlook them, but moths are actually many, many, many more times more diverse than butterflies. And there are some stunning moths. If you're in a good part of we got some native habitat around you, maybe some woods around you, look at your porch light at night, you can see some moths that are just as beautiful, if not more beautiful than the butterflies.
So they're not creepy and scary because I feel like because they come out at night and then they can get really big and slightly hairy, we tend to squeal at them, at least at my house, Matt. So we should be in awe of them, not squeal at them.
Yeah, I mean, they perform a lot of the same functions butterflies do. I just think of them as being fuzzy butterflies. And, they're so much more diverse, and there's a lot of really interesting color. People just think of the brown boring moths, but there's a lot of fascinating pattern moths out there, too.
Now, I know you guys, or at least some of you, I don't know if you will yourself, Matt, be at the Mississippi Science or Natural Science Museum. I think it's coming up Wednesday. There's a pollinator event.
We'll be there.
Oh, cool. Okay. And we're encouraging folks to get out and take advantage of all the events this spring break. But let's talk about the pollinators. What makes them, I know when I think of wings and insects, it's butterflies and then bees, which are our pollinators. So what's the importance of pollinators here in our state?
So, flowers can't move around to spread their genes. So they've paired with these insect partners to do that for them. And some of them, a lot of insects pollinate them, but some plants are extremely specific in the insects that they have pollinate them. Some bees will only visit one type of flower, and that one type of flower only has that one bee as its pollinator. And so there's some really intimate insect-plant interactions going on out there with pollination, and that's the only way these plants survive. You can take and plant these plants wherever you want, but if you don't have their insects with them, there's no way they can reproduce and spread there.
So how do I get my insects with my plants?
Well, sometimes it's just not that easy because insects are part of a complex ecosystem, and we can't just pick and choose pieces of that, but if we can promote diverse overall ecosystems to provide, the multiple needs of the insects and the multiple needs of the plants, you get this whole picture moving together. And that's really a lot of what we're working on with restoration projects like for our native black belt prairie.
Ooh, tell us a little bit more about that, Matt.
So that's a really interesting Mississippi habitat that very few people know about. It's this big crescent shape that goes through Mississippi and into part of Alabama that it looks like the Great Plains. Now, that habitat is 98% gone because it's really good farmland. But there are remnants of the black belt prairie throughout Mississippi and Alabama that have just a fascinating array of beautiful flowers and insects that, you find them in Mississippi and Alabama, and then you find them out in the Great Plains and nowhere in between.
So as we move into the spring and summer, I know a lot of us will get out there and be weeding and using different things, and I know that can get in two camps of conversation, right? But what should we at least be sensitive to when we think about our gardening, or whether it's plant or vegetation gardenings that will come later on when it comes to keeping around the good ones?
Well, if you're just looking at getting grass out of your garden, I wouldn't really be concerned about that. But if you're getting interesting looking plants coming up, maybe try to see if any of those are native flowers coming up. Most of the grasses we have around here, especially in yards and in gardens, tend to be exotic grasses brought in for turf or for hay. But, look for these little odd plants coming up that you might not recognize them initially and try to find out what they are. And maybe you'll find a little gem popping up in your garden.
So where can we find Mississippi, your museum? I'm going to say it wrong, so I wasn't even going to try.
You're fine. We're here on the campus of Mississippi State University. We're kind of tucked away in one corner of campus, but we are open for visitors. We get school groups coming through. We have individuals coming through that are interested. We are happy to host anybody that will come out to the Mississippi Entomological Museum. We have a whole slew of Mississippi native insects and pollinators in the museum. We also have a large collection of Panamanian butterflies that people just love to see when they come over.
Matt, what's your favorite insect?
I am torn. I love butterflies, but I'm trained as a forest entomologist, and so I just love some of those beetles that get in trees.
That is not what I thought you would say. But you know what? I love going back to the beginning of your story that you got inspired to be a bug man, a scientist, I guess, a bug scientist. Through a middle school, like when you were in middle school, you never know when our kids will get inspired of what they want to do with their profession. And there are so many opportunities out there to do unique things. So, Matt, I appreciate your time.
Of course, it's my pleasure.
All righty. Well, so think about the butterflies and all when you're looking out in your spring this summer. They have a purpose. And stick with us. We've got more for you up next.